Hello again, folks. When I started out making candles, I got some wax and bought some wick, made a candle, lit it, and it was a complete failure, going out after a short period of time. I started to research why this was and found out that not only are there many different types of wax and wax blends, but there are also many different types of wicks. It's a question of which wicks won't work well with which wax and which wicks will work well with which wax. The best analogy is to imagine you have a glass of water and a milkshake. You have one straw through which it's easy to suck the water but difficult to suck the milkshake. What you need for the milkshake is a larger straw, and the same is true for candles. Depending on the composition of the wax, you'll need a particular wick to ensure that the capillary action that makes a candle work does so efficiently. Wick charts point you in the right direction and give you, roughly speaking, the best option, but they aren't always perfect. Research told me that in our case, the LX range of wicks is made specifically for container candles because it's braided and gives a tightly controlled flame. As for the size of a wick, the diameter of the container is taken into consideration, and as these containers are 1.97 inches in diameter, the size needed fell between the LX10 and LX12 wicks. As I wasn't exactly sure what each type of leftover candle was made from, I started testing the different ones I'd found in church and made votives separately from tea lights and so on, using the LX10 and LX12 wicks. I put different coloured electrician's tape on the bottom of a container in each batch in order to monitor how they performed. What I found was the LX12 wick worked really well with all of the candles. Clearly, the same wax or very similar blends of wax were used in all of the different types that were available to me. Because of the results of my tests, I now sometimes mix waxes from different leftover candles, as I know which ones can be safely combined when used with the LX12 wick. I still tend to make batches out of each type of candle, however, and still put some coloured tape on the bottom of one of the containers in each batch, just in order to monitor their performance. When you watch videos made by professional candle makers, and there are some fantastic ones on YouTube, they all talk about testing. This is to do with the scent candles give off, called throw, but also to ensure that the correct type and size wick is being used to ensure they are both efficient and safe. When you start out making candles, I strongly advise you to experiment with the wax you have at your disposal, using different wicks. It's a little time consuming, but well worth it and good fun. The most important aspect is that you need to ensure that the wick isn't too big for the container. You don't want a capillary action that goes nuts. That's a technical term. Or going back to our analogy, you don't want a huge straw through which you drink water. When you test your votives and container candles generally, it's a good idea to burn the candle all the way down to the bottom. This is because as the candle burns down, the flame becomes increasingly encased within the container and the temperature inside rises, which may affect the result. The wax you test with won't be wasted, by the way, as it can be remelted and reused. When testing, I found it to be a good idea to label the containers. This came after placing bits of paper by each one, noting which wick and wax I was using, a strategy that was fine until someone opened a door, there was a draft, and the notes flew everywhere. That was a case of, let's start again, or words to that effect. I hope my testing will save you a lot of time, and I would suggest that you too try the LX range of wicks. I thought to give you examples of different wicks being tested, bearing in mind the wax is exactly the same in each container, having been taken from one candle. This one is a random wick I bought when I hadn't a clue what I was doing. Arguably, I still don't have a clue what I'm doing. Now, the wick in this candle is too small and is tunnelling or burning down the middle of the candle. Eventually will extinguish itself exactly like this one. The one in the middle has an LX12 wick and it's burning nicely. It has a melt pool of about 1/4 inch in depth, which indicates that the candle has the correct size wick. The wick in this one is taken from a Pascal candle. You can see that it's too big for the candle and its container, and the flame's going wild. I made this purely for demonstration purposes, and it's clearly not fit for purpose. If a candle is made with a wick that's too big like this one, carbon builds up and causes what's known as mushrooming. And when this happens, the flame flickers and dances around like this one. It smokes and soot accumulates on the container. And if this happens, it's best to extinguish the flame immediately. I'm going to extinguish these now, and whereas a snuffer works well for taper candles, dipping the wick into the wax is best with container candles. As by doing this, you'll see that there isn't any smoke, whereas when I blow this one out, it smokes, which we don't want. If I hold this up, I'm sure you'll be able to see the mushrooming caused by carbon buildup on the wick. Whether you make candles or just enjoy them in your home, it's crucial that you regularly trim the wick. With these types of candles, you won't want to burn them for longer than about 4 hours without doing so, as this can also lead to carbon buildup with mushrooming and its associated issues. One of the tests I carried out was to make votives using identical wax and wicks. The candle that had its wick trimmed every 4 hours lasted for 20 hours, which was 2.5 hours longer than the candle that didn't have its wick trimmed at all. This is the container in which the wick was trimmed every 4 hours, and this is the container in which the wick wasn't trimmed. You can see very clearly the extra amount of soot that has built up on this one. Trimming the wick undoubtedly leads to a more efficient, cost-effective, cleaner, safer burn. The wick snippers I showed you previously are designed to reach down inside the container, and because they're angled, are more effective than scissors. Trimming the wick to about 1/4 inch in length generally works well, albeit some manufacturers specify which length is required for their candles. Clearly, we want our candles to burn efficiently. We don't want to be inhaling smoke in our homes, and we don't want to be causing soot to form on the walls of our churches, many of which have wonderful artwork and are architectural gems. These are well worth using. I buy wicks already attached to metal wick tabs like this. It's possible to buy wicks or wick tabs independently if you wish to save a little money, but the cost per candle for these is negligible, and these do save you some time. The wick tab is important not only because it attaches the wick to the bottom of the container, but it also extinguishes the flame before it burns down to the very bottom of the wick. This is for safety reasons, as it reduces the risk that the container will crack. Wick tab stickers made from double-sided tape glue the wick in a centered position to the bottom of the container, and wick holders hold the wick in an upright position. You can buy them made of wood. They're basically ice lolly sticks with a hole in them. You could just buy a lot of ice lollies. Some people use clothes pegs, which work well, or the type made specifically for the task, like this one, which is made of aluminium and has a slot into which you can lock the wick to keep it taut.